What's up, everyone? Back for another beer review, and today is day one of the 6th annual 10 Days of Pumpkin here on the channel. And to kick off the festivities this year, I am reviewing a beer from the Neshaminy Creek Brewing Company, and they're out of Croydon, Pennsylvania, and this is their Young Pumpkinstein, and this is the 2023 release. So they're calling this one a Märzen-style Lager with allspice, candied ginger, cinnamon, and nutmeg. It comes in at 5.2% alcohol by volume, 23 IBUs at the time of review. And this can is approximately 6 weeks old. So we're kicking this year's 10 Days of Pumpkin off with basically a pumpkin lager. And this is more or less a hybrid of a Märzen-style Oktoberfest and a pumpkin spiced lager. Now, there is no real pumpkin in here, which is disappointing, but I've always said that if you're gonna use pumpkin spices without the pumpkin, at least have some sort of good or substantial base. And being this is a Märzen-style Oktoberfest base, I think we should be okay. Now, one of my favorite beers from last year, as far as pumpkin beers go, was from Neshaminy Creek, and it was their Punkless Dunkel. It was an Imperial Pumpkin Dunkelweizen. I did not review it for the 10 Days of Pumpkin. I did review it, I think, in November, but it was fantastic. It was like, I don't know, banana, I would say pumpkin banana bread is the best way for me to explain it. It was fantastic. So I'm thinking if they can make this work, to me, that is impressive, and they would be 2 for 2. So anyway, let's crack this one open, get it into the glass, and kick off this year's 10 Days of Pumpkin. So 10 Days of Pumpkin, more or less, I review a pumpkin beer 10 straight days at the end of October, culminating on Halloween, and this is day one. So yeah, it's looking like a Märzen. It really is. It's also looking like a pumpkin beer, because pumpkin beer is definitely, I would say this looks more like a pumpkin beer, for being honest. It's darker than a lot of Märzens, for sure. But we're going to throw this over here, and so yeah, that honestly looks like a lot of pumpkin beers. I feel like pumpkin beers have that more of that, like, you know, almost into a light brown, medium colored brown, along with like the orange hues. On camera, it's going to look way different than it does in person. Hold up to light, it definitely, you know, I could see somebody saying a Märzen, but it has too much of a haze and not a clarity, because Märzens are lagers, so you'd want that clarity. It has more of a haze. There's particulates, probably from the spices and whatnot. It had about a finger of this lightly tan-colored head, now displayed to a thin film. I noticed a lot of pumpkin beers do that, probably from the spices themselves. The additions of them probably mess up the head retention. A little bit of legs at 5.2%. There's not going to be any substantial alcohol, I don't think. Let's get a nose. That is interesting. So I get the base Märzen, like it has this nice, just, it smells, has a little bit like lager funk going on, right? A little bit of like a sulfur kind of note, but it also has like this big bready, toasted bread, almost a slight drizzle of like caramel. So the base malts here are screaming, which you usually get in a Märzen, but then on top of that, I'm getting more like of that ginger and allspice. Not as much cinnamon, definitely that candied ginger and the allspice kicking me in the nostrils. Not as much nutmeg and cinnamon. It's more, for me, candied ginger and allspice. So a little bit of like a spiciness, kind of probably coming from the base hops that is mixing in with the spices themselves. So I think it's cohesive from that standpoint. It actually blends together quite nicely. Touch of brown sugar too. Again, this is, I'm not sitting here looking at it a perspective as, oh, it better hit the you know, aromatic notes that you would get from a Märzen. No, because this is a hybrid and they're trying something different. I'm definitely getting pumpkin lager vibes of this one, or pumpkin beer vibes in general. Has brown sugar, a little bit of molasses, touch of vanilla. It smells like a well-made pumpkin beer. This year on the 10 Days Pumpkin, I really don't have like a regular pumpkin ale or imperial pumpkin ale that's just like pumpkin and pumpkin spices with a base beer. For the most part, it's something different. Like I got a couple of these lagers. I have some, you know, coffee pumpkin porters and coffee pumpkin stout. I have a couple barrel-aged beers. I have a smoothie sour. So this is like the closest I'm probably going to get to a regular pumpkin beer this year. And I'll tell you what, it smells pretty fucking good. So let's get into it. Cheers, everyone. Or should I say prost, considering the style. Cheers. It's good. It's really good. Neshaminy Creek, I've had a couple beers from them in the past before that pumpkin beer, and I thought their stuff was pretty solid. And then I had that Punkless Dunkel last year, blew me away. And this is just, for something that's different. And I know nowadays there's, you know, everybody's done everything when it comes to craft beer, it seems. But I don't I can't recall off the top of my head having a actual pumpkin Märzen or pumpkin Oktoberfest. A lot of people confuse pumpkin beers with Oktoberfest. They're like, that Oktoberfest, I hate pumpkin beers. And it's like, well, no, Oktoberfest beers aren't pumpkin beers. But the fact that they kind of married the two styles together and did a pretty good job, kudos to them off of that first sip. Body at 5.2%. It is a bit thin. This is like higher side of light body, so it's a little bit thin, slightly watery. So I'd say that's like the one negative to this beer. The mouthfeel, though, it's pretty crisp. It's very smooth on the palate. It's relatively clean, too, with all those spices and whatnot. It's still very clean on the back of the palate. The taste, how do I explain this? If you've ever had a well-made pumpkin ale, but just replace the ale portion with a lager where it's more crisp and clean and refreshing, that's what this beer is. Right at the forefront, I get bready, like a toasted bread quality, maybe slightly like a biscuit tone, a little bit of caramel and brown sugar as it passes through. The spices hit about halfway through. And again, it's more candied ginger, allspice. The cinnamon nutmeg touch on like the back of the palate. I'm getting a little bit of like undertones of like vanilla, which is cool because there is no vanilla as far as I know. I think the only thing missing from this is maybe like a little bit of an earthiness from the pumpkin. And I think if they did brew this with a pumpkin, actual pumpkin, whether it's canned pumpkin puree or real or whatever, I think that body would have been kind of it would go from higher side of light to like lower side of medium or maybe even medium. I think for me, pumpkin in a pumpkin beer usually brings to the forefront more of like a body and mouthfeel as opposed to a taste. But I think even a little bit of earthiness in the taste would be nice from actual pumpkin. Really easy to drink. Back of the palate. This is not too sweet, which is really nice. You get all that sweet malty goodness up front. The back of the palate has a mild bitterness, but it's more of a almost full-on dryness. And I think it's drying. The spices are helping that, like a slight cinnamon kind of allspice, a drying sensation on the back of the palate. Yeah, 5.2%. You really can't tell outside of the body being a little bit thin. I like this. This is not going to be for probably everybody. If you like, put it this way, if you like regular pumpkin ales, if you like Whole Hog's one of my favorite pumpkin ales, or Legion's Night Owl, something like that, just a regular like 6.5% pumpkin ale, and you're in PA or you can get Neshaminy Creek stuff, try this one out, especially if you also enjoy lagers. This is kind of just reminds me of a well-made good pumpkin ale, but it's a lager instead of an ale, and it just works nicely. I'm not going to go crazy high on this one just because that thin kind of body is a little bit of a detriment, especially if that, they're calling itself a Märzen. I want to see closer to like a lower side of medium or medium, period. Sirens, try to wrap this up. But I think this is pretty good. So I'm going to give Neshaminy Creek's Young Pumpkinstein, the 2023 release, I'm going to give this a high 4 out of 5 and go 4.1 out of 5. It would definitely get into the low to maybe even straight on 4.25 range if that body, something definitely going on, if that body was a little bit more substantial. It's like, I don't want to sit and harp on the body that much, but you got to be honest with, what I'm reviewing right here is a very well-made pumpkin lager, more or less. It's just the body's a little bit thin, and I would like to see that bumped up a little bit, and I would really, really dig this one. Price point availability. I picked this up at a Wegmans grocery store in Erie, Pennsylvania. It was crazy because I haven't seen it yet at any of my local Wegmans. I'm sure they exist, but it was a side-by-side. They had the mix your own 6-pack. They were $13.99, a little bit more expensive than it is here in New York. And then it was $16.99 for a 4-pack. And they had a bunch of, I picked up 2 beers from New Trail. They're flannel weather. They just came in. They're like a week old, so I grabbed 2 of them. I grabbed this, and I grabbed sour from, was it North Country Brewing Company? It was a peach cobbler, I think, sour. But for $16.99 to try something that I've never had before, so that you're paying $4.25 for that can, I'd imagine 4 packs of this aren't $16.99. I would imagine they're probably in like the $12, $14, maybe $16 range. But I am not upset I paid $4.25 for that, but I would imagine it's a bit cheaper if you were just buy a 4-pack or a single can at a beer store. I would guess $3 to $3.50 probably for a can. But I'm not mad at it, let's just say that. So, if you've had this one before, post in the comment section. Let me know what you think about this one. Young Pumpkinstein. And I love the artwork. The artwork's pretty fantastic, for being honest here. A take on Young Frankenstein. And because it's a hybrid with pumpkin, makes sense. So is there anything else I am missing on here? Nope. Nothing. So anyway, This is day 1 of the 10 days of pumpkin. A good start, 4.1 out of 5. And like I said, if you've had it before, or if you've had that Punkless Dunkel, let me know as well, because that was really good. Definitely better than this one, but it was also imperial and not fair to compare to this. So I appreciate everybody stopping by for a day 1 of the 10 days of pumpkin. Check back tomorrow. We're doing Energy City Brewing's Bistro Pumpkin Cobbler, which is basically a smoothie style pumpkin sour ale, and I'm looking forward to it. I've only had one other within that style, but it sounds really good. So I appreciate everybody stopping by for another beer review here on the Beer Patrol. To the next one, cheers.